Hey surf skating friends from all over the world, I'm Steve with Surf Skate Love, and in this video I'm going to show you how to adjust your Carver C7 surf skate truck. Now I actually think it's pretty common from a lot of comments that I've seen online that a lot of people don't even know that you can adjust your C7. And it actually has a very wide range of adjustment that makes a very big difference in the ride. And I actually just the other day had somebody ask me if I keep my C7 on factory settings or if I adjust, and my answer was I always adjust. In fact, as a rule of thumb, I think that you should be always adjusting and fine-tuning just to experiment with things and see how they work for you, because it all comes down to personal preference and the application that you're using it for. So the C7 is actually very easy to adjust. It is a dual axis system, and what that means is it has two axes or dimensions of motion. The first, of course, being your lateral arm that creates that lateral swing on it that you get on a surf skate truck. And the second being your kingpin bolt, which just like on any skateboard or longboard is going to give you the lean on those bushings. So let's just start with that one while we're here. This is very simple. It's just like any kingpin. And obviously the looser you go on this, the more range of motion, which means the more lean you're going to get on your board. Now personally, I like a lot of lean, so I like to go as loose as possible. So you can tighten this down if you want. If you want to get rid of some lean, you can go pretty tight on this and have hardly anything. Personally, I like it as loose as possible, but you will find on this that if you loosen it too much, I'll just do this here for you here. If we go to about here, you're going to see that you get play in that. So personally, I like this as loose as it'll go without that play. So you have to kind of snug that down just a little bit. And well, even that is just about right there. So now I've got that as loose as possible, which creates more lean, but without that play. So that's very simple to adjust there. Now, as far as adjusting your lateral arm, it's this bolt right here. And this actually makes a very big difference. And it adds a lot of versatility to the C7 truck. So we can go as tight as possible. So there's about as tight as we can get, and you can see how I still have some swing in there, just a little bit, but it's very tight, and that's going to give me a very decreased range of motion. And then if I go all the way loose, we'll see what that looks like. Now with that all the way loose, you can see how I have a much wider range of motion. But also you can tell that I actually went too loose, and so that spring in there is actually not really even engaging. So I wanted to show you this up close underneath. This is what that C7 looks like underneath, is you've got this spring right there. You can see how that's our range of motion in the C7. Right there. And the tension is created by this spring in here. So this is going to connect to that little arm right there, and as we tighten this, you can see how that's just going to tighten up that spring. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to show you this is because I've got the C7 here, and then I've got a Yao Meraki. I wanted to just compare these springs because with the Yao Meraki, it's a much tighter spring. And with both this Carver C7 and the Smooth Star, by the way, is adjustable in the same way, but it's just an Allen key right here. The Smooth Star is actually even a smaller spring than this C7. So the difference in springs, this is a softer spring and this is a tighter spring. And I'm going to actually take you outside and we're going to do some riding, and I'm going to show you why this matters. But first, I just wanted to show you what happens if you go too loose on your C7. And now you can see it from this angle. We'll go as loose as we can get, and what you're going to see is essentially it's just basically not going to work because you are not engaging that spring at all. So you're not going to get any spring action whatsoever, and it's going to kind of just what I'm going to call flop on you, and I'll show you outside how that works. So you got to be careful to not go too loose on that. Okay, so I'm going to take this green room outside with these C7 trucks. We're going to do some adjusting on it and some riding so I can kind of demonstrate the difference that it makes. And I want to point out to you something about why that soft spring matters and why I'm showing you that. But first, I just want to point out the advantages of this adjustable spring. Basically, you can use the C7 for a wide range of applications. So I've been learning how to ride in a bowl over the last couple of months, and I've tried several trucks in the bowl, including the Smooth Star Thruster, the Yao Meraki, the Carver C7, the Carver CX, and Slide. You might have a completely different preference, but for me, what I've found is in the bowl, I want a tighter, more stable truck. So I've personally landed on the Carver CX as my favorite Surfskate truck, but I can use the Carver C7 in the bowl very, very easily. Why? Because it's adjustable. So if I'm riding the C7 in a bowl, I just tighten that spring up and it makes it a lot more stable in a bowl. And then if I'm going to go cruise out in the streets, I'm going to loosen that because I want as wide of a range of motion as possible. Okay, so let's take this thing outside, do some adjustments, and see the difference that it makes in the ride. All right, let's do some adjusting and some riding on this. The first thing I'm going to do is tighten this all the way as much as possible so we can see what that looks like. So I've got my trusty Carver tool here, and we're going to just tighten this sucker up all the way. So that's as tight as we're going to get it. You can see what that looks like right there. And let's go ahead and give this a ride, see how she feels. Okay, so you'll see that even at the tightest setting, I still have a very wide range of motion with this. It's very easy to pump and carve. And it's also what I'm going to call springier when it's tighter, and I'm going to show you what this means when we loosen it up. So let's go ahead and loosen it up now. Okay, so let's see how this thing rides now with it as loose as it goes. So I don't know if you can see this visually, but the effect that it has is essentially when it loosens up that arm can go more side to side. So what I feel is when I loosen it up, you're going to get the front foot is easier to go side to side, and it creates a feeling similar to what I feel in the Smooth Star, where it's less kind of up and down bouncy. I don't know how to describe that, like compression extension versus more side to side sway. But the biggest difference that this makes for me when I loosen up the C7 is because of that soft spring, it makes it just a little bit harder to start out. It's what I'm going to call, the word that comes to my mind is that soft spring is kind of mushy. It just is not as tight. So it's great. It rides. It's very smooth and flowy, wide range of motion. But let me just show you the difference between this and the Yao Meraki. Okay, so I've got the C7 and I've got the Meraki. The Meraki is not adjustable. So when I go on a Carver C7, when I lean into a turn and it comes this way, and then when I come back to center, it's just not as much of a, what I'm gonna call a snap back to center, or we could call it a rebound. So on this Yao, I'm gonna lean into a curve, and then when I come back to center, it's a very quite tight pop, where the C7 is just a little bit mushier coming up. And so the big difference that makes for me on the C7 versus the Meraki is that it's just a little bit harder to start out, and it makes for, when I'm cruising, I think it makes for a little bit less efficient cruising for me, because I feel like that tighter spring is actually kind of helping me when I'm coming back versus it being more of my body strength, bringing it back to center on that pump. So that's just something to be aware of on the C7, is that the looser you adjust it, the more what I'm going to call mushier it gets, and you just get less of a spring going back and forth on that lean. And it also means that if you loosen it too much, you're actually going to completely disengage that spring. And as I showed you, you're just going to be hitting those stops, and that's too much. So there you have it. That's how to adjust a Carver C7. Go and play with yours. Go and play with the bolt that adjusts the spring. Go and play with this. See what that does to your lean. And you can customize this ride according to your preferences.